Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather, 17th day of August, 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show once again. First here, a virtual Skywarn weather spotter training session is scheduled here for Southeast Alaska. And of course, 2 sessions in August, and the Southeast Alaska Weather Spotter Training class. And it'll be held, the first one will be at 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, August 26th, and then the second one will be 2 p.m. Sunday, August 30th. So online via GoToMeeting, find training schedule here, weather.gov/AJK/Skywarn. And you can learn about hazardous weather that could impact your town. And you can become an official trained weather spotter for the Juneau Forecast Office. And of course, that'll boost the chance to improve confidence up to the high category if you do that. Anyway, moving on to fire danger. Southern Alaska really improved quite a bit. Only a small area there on the west side of the Alaska Range there in the eastern Kuskokwim Valley area. And so greatly improved there. None for Kodiak Island that reached into the high category. And just a narrow strip there in the Copper River Basin in the valley, east of Gulkana. Lower 70s there today, but wind's not much of a problem. And then kind of an expanded area in the Fairbanks area, getting up into the high fire danger category, and then out around Tanana, actually very high there, just south of the Yukon River, and then extending in toward Fairbanks. And a couple areas showing back up there over the Yukon Flats along the Yukon River, one up there where joins the Porcupine River, and a little bit to the southwest, and then across the Koyukuk-Kobuk Valley out to the northern Seward Peninsula around Buckland, areas of high fire danger starting to show up there, also up toward the Noatak Valley area. Otherwise, not too bad around the remainder of the state as far as fire danger goes for the middle of August. And from there are no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere in the state for the next day or so. But of course, when it comes to warnings and advisories, watches, that could change without notice. And moving on to satellite imagery, you can see a swirl of clouds there over the southern Gulf of Alaska or Northeast Pacific. And that's sending surges of moisture up to the panhandle with a pretty good southerly jet, and then that's pulling back to the west-northwest over the Gulf of Alaska and the eastern North Gulf Coast. That brought another rainy day for the panhandle, but rainfall amounts weren't as heavy as they have been over the last 12 hours. 0.4 of an inch fell at Yakutat, Juneau, Wrangell, and Ketchikan, so kind of uniform as far as the rainfall amounts go from one end of the southeast coast to the other. But that starting to stream some clouds farther to the west, and some light showers gone into Cordova here at mid-afternoon, as well as up at Chisana in the eastern Copper River Basin. Both locations picked up 1/100th of an inch of precipitation, and clouds making their way to the southern Kenai Peninsula. Not a bad day, Kodiak Island, still some sunshine at the state airport there, and across much of the island, but clouds just reaching the southern part of the island there, but clear Bristol Bay and up into the interior there, clear skies and sunshine, Kenai Peninsula, Matanuska-Susitna Valley, Copper River Basin. You can see much of the interior as well, up to the Brooks Range, some cases the North Slope as well, and temperatures into the lower to mid 70s in many areas, and upper 70s again in the Susitna Valley and Kuskokwim Valley. And for the chart today, you can see that front along the Alaska Peninsula. That was a little bit more of a wind than precipitation producer, although even the winds weren't all that impressive. Gusts 35 miles an hour at Cold Bay, as well as Port Hayden. And otherwise lighter winds elsewhere. And some light precipitation is a few hundredths of an inch reported in the last 12 hours at Unalaska, western Alaska Peninsula, and back toward Adak and Atka, with another trough could spread some showers from the western Aleutians, will come eastward tonight, but really no significant weather going on out there. That whole low complex is going to continue to weaken and wash out over the next day or so. Was a lightning strike in the central Copper River Basin this afternoon. Nothing really widespread, but kind of signifying the increasing instability, increasing moisture coming into the Copper River Basin, being circulated around from east to west there, or southeast to northwest around that low center in the Gulf of Alaska. 1,009 millibar low, not all that impressive, and a weak trough again kept it wet over the Panhandle today. And really, the only significant area of low clouds and fog appeared to be the Bering Strait down towards St. Lawrence Island, and then out over the Bering Sea to the Aleutians. And for tonight, those winds that gusted to 35 miles an hour on the central Arctic coast today, those will diminish tonight, and low clouds and fog will be on the increase along all the Arctic coast and Arctic Ocean areas down into the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, even down toward Nunivak Island. Low pressure still keeping it unsettled with that front washing out over the Alaska Peninsula, really weakening now. And just some couple of troughs bring some increased threat of moisture to the central Aleutians, but that whole complex there will just result in increasing IFR as the winds become lighter. Otherwise, a trough swinging west-northwest will increase the shower activity over the Copper River Basin and the clouds and eventually the showers in over the south-central Alaska zone, especially along the Alaska Range tonight into the Talkeetnas, maybe the Chugach, increasing chances of showers, increasing chance of light rain and showers. Prince William Sound, actually a better chance there in the North Gulf Coast, but places like Yakutat becoming more showery. And over the southeast coast, possibly ending over the central Panhandle, still a chance of moisture with a weak trough over the southern areas, and a risk of showers, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay from about Juneau up to, say, Haines and then Skagway, but precipitation on the decrease and really not significant, especially compared to what you've had. But low clouds and fog will continue to increase. That low center now drifting toward the eastern Aleutians tomorrow for continued cloudy and possibly some light rain, fog, and drizzle. Definitely IFR conditions on the increase, as I mentioned, over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, northward through the Bering Strait. Chance of showers over the western North Slope and chance of fog on the eastern Arctic coast. And definitely cooler and cloudier and better chance of showers. Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Mountains eastward becomes a little more increased here over south central Alaska. Risk of an afternoon thunderstorm. Wrangell Mountains, maybe the western Alaska Range. It's a very slight chance, but the risk does exist. And showers should get as far north possibly as Eagle there, spreading up toward the Yukon River across the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country. And still that low pressure area spinning a couple of surges of moisture into the Panhandle. So periods of rain and showers kind of overspread the whole area tomorrow again, but not all that heavy, but enough to keep it cloudy and cool. And that front now weakened into a trough, so chance of light rain continues for the Alaska Peninsula, but no more gusty winds. No change for the eastern Aleutians. High pressure building over the western Aleutians on Wednesday kind of covers the entire Bering Sea with 3,018 millibar high centers across the area there. Light winds, virtually no gradient, and that's going to result in IFR to low IFR with low clouds and fog from the Aleutians northward through the Bering Strait, up around the Arctic coast. Chance of light rain, fog, drizzle, or showers from the Brooks Range on out to the central Arctic coast, mostly sunny central interior. And continued mostly cloudy, chance of showers, isolated thunderstorms possible over the Wrangell Mountains, and a chance of showers continues to the Panhandle, but increasing chances for sunshine there over the southern southeast coast, Prince of Wales Island, Ketchikan, over toward Hyder, in advance of that warm front that's sweeping up across the Queen Charlotte Islands. Lows tonight, lower to mid-50s for the southeast coast, lower to mid-50s south central Alaska, into the Kuskokwim Valley and actually out to the Yukon Delta, Kuskokwim Delta, Alaska Peninsula, near 40 on the Arctic coast. And then the highs for Tuesday afternoon, mid-70s again over a pretty good stretch of the central interior, with Ambler looking at 74, as well as Tanana, Fairbanks, Galena, and McGrath all have a forecast high of 74. Cooling down into the mid to upper 60s, south central Alaska or south of the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin area, upper 50s to lower 60s for the southeast coast. Near 60 Kodiak was still upper 60s, lower 70s Bristol Bay, and lower to mid 50s for the Aleutians, near 50 on the Arctic coast. Lows Wednesday morning, 40s, mid 30s for the central Arctic coast, otherwise mid 40s to lower to mid 50s for the lows most everywhere else. That'll be followed by highs again in the lower to mid 70s, edging it down a little bit, but staying in the 70s in the central interior, 65 to 72 for the Susitna Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather for Tuesday morning, IFR central eastern Arctic coast, and VFR maybe on down from Point Barrow down toward Wainwright, and then back into the IFR all the way through the Bering Strait, covering just about all the Bering Sea and the Aleutians from Atka eastward to the Alaska Peninsula. VFR Bristol Bay and much of the interior, but marginal VFR on the increase, southern Cook Inlet and up along the southern Alaska Range on the eastern slopes. Also IFR pushing into Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast, the Coast Range, and marginal VFR for the Panhandle with IFR over toward the border. And for Tuesday afternoon, looks good over the interior again, with conditions improving there on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but staying IFR there on the west side. And again, IFR down across the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, all the way down across the Pribilof, Nunivak Island, and all of the Aleutians, IFR tomorrow afternoon, and western portion of the Alaska Peninsula, and also south side there, almost up to Chignik, mostly marginal for Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet marginal, IFR, Resurrection Bay on up into western and central Prince William Sound, Passage Canal, marginal VFR North Gulf Coast, and marginal VFR in the increase coming into Turnagain Arm, and looks like the Talkeetnas, and also kind of expanding there over the eastern Copper River Basin, IFR southern coast of the Panhandle, otherwise marginal. And for Wednesday morning, that area IFR slips northwestward there up the coastline of the southeast coast. Otherwise, the remainder of the area is marginal. Marginal VFR, Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, eastern southern Kenai Peninsula, southern Cook Inlet, IFR east side of Kodiak Island, marginal for Bristol Bay, solid IFR for the Aleutians, Bering Sea northward there into across the Yukon Delta, part of the Kuskokwim Delta, as well as the western north slope and just about all the Arctic coast, otherwise VFR in the interior. And for the afternoon, that improves a little bit up there in the north, marginal VFR right down to the Brooks Range there from the north slope, but south of the mountains, VFR again, and improving VFR afternoon for Cook Inlet, but still hanging on to some marginal VFR there, southern Kenai Peninsula and into Prince William Sound, and some improvement over the southern southeast coast, central and northern areas though, marginal. And the Aleutians still IFR from Unmak Island westward and northward through the Bering Strait to the central and most of the eastern Arctic coast. Passes Anatuvik and Adigan tomorrow, another VFR day coming up there. Looking good for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR on either approach, and both entrances to Rainy and through the pass look good as well. VFR once again. Another VFR day for Windy as well. And Isabel VFR. Mentasta VFR trending toward marginal VFR into the afternoon toward evening. Same thing for Tanita. VFR trending toward marginal VFR. Portage, marginal VFR becomes IFR. And Chilkoot and White look marginal. Freezing levels 10,000 feet over the north central interior, back down to the southwest coast there and across the Alaska Peninsula, otherwise 8,000 feet, southeast Alaska and the Panhandle, as well as the Aleutians, except far western Aleutians, 12,000 feet. Icing, light to very isolated, moderate, best potential there eastern North Gulf Coast, across Yakutat, on down toward Elfin Cove, and then down to the Gulf. Otherwise, pretty much icing free remainder of the state, kind of a narrow band of some icing threats there just off the western Arctic coast. And for the jet stream, low pressure there in the northeast Pacific south of the Gulf of Alaska. So we've got south to southeast winds, 60 to 90 knots into the panhandle. And still northerlies to northeast, 65 knots right across south central Alaska. So Sitna Valley down, diminishing over Kodiak Island. High pressure to the northwest, and then southwest flow or southerly flow increasing from the Seward Peninsula up to the western Arctic coast. Low pressure over the southeast or south of the Pribilofs keeps the strongest winds just south of the Aleutian chain. 9,000 feet, high pressure over the interior, increasing southerly winds western Arctic coast, and wind's not much of a factor with the low there in the Bering Sea, 3,000 feet as well, but enough of a breeze that throws some light to isolated moderate chop in along the central coast of the Panhandle, the Alaska Peninsula, and around Adak, but nothing too serious, and otherwise the remainder of the state looking pretty smooth turbulence-wise.
What we're looking at is a legacy of the Ice Age. Permafrost and methane is a time machine. So what we're going to do is walk back in time. We're going to see old carbon, old bones, old environments, and none of those are in equilibrium with today's climate, so that's the problem. That world doesn't exist anymore, and it hasn't for 10,000 years. It was nicely and very delicately separated from this modern warmer climate by about this much moss. And when that moss goes away, whether for fire or for human disturbance or for warming, then all hell breaks loose.
Permafrost. It's maybe the part of the cryosphere that's most out of sight and mind. It's fascinating how it formed in the first place and how it got loaded with so much carbon. In a minute, we'll go back underground with Matthew Sturm from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. But first, let's meet Peter Griffith, NASA's project manager for the Above campaign, which supports more than 70 science projects studying forest and tundra vegetation, wildfires, animals like birds, caribou, and Dall sheep, methane emissions from expanding northern lakes, and the impacts of climate change on people in Alaska, Canada, and around the world. Many of those projects have some direct connection to permafrost.
Permafrost is the hidden cryosphere. It's the permanently frozen soil that surrounds the Arctic, all across Alaska, northern Canada, and then across Eurasia. The ground has been frozen during the ice ages.
During the ice ages, there was not enough snowfall in the drier regions of Alaska and Canada to form glaciers there, so the land was suitable for vegetation.
What happened is that over thousands and thousands of years, all of that plant material got compacted and frozen every winter and buried and pushed down, so that today there's 300 feet deep of frozen water and dead plants and some pieces of dead animals too. Sometimes you find woolly mammoths in the permafrost. But most of it, of the organic matter as we call it in the permafrost, is frozen plant material.
Some of that plant material is now thawing and decaying, releasing its ancient carbon into the atmosphere, sometimes in the form of methane gas bubbling out of expanding northern lakes.
We started this field campaign because the Arctic is the part of the planet that is warming first and fastest. And there are consequences to this for permafrost. So during the Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, we're studying permafrost with people on the ground, from aircraft flying over the region, and also from satellites in space.
Another way to understand the permafrost is to take a walk below ground with Matthew Sturm and into the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permafrost tunnel.
And they've dug this tunnel back into the side of a hill about 200 feet, And it goes sort of sloping down so that by the end of the tunnel, you're about 100 feet underground. And you're surrounded by bones sticking out of the wall from the steppe bison and mastodons that are frozen in it. There's sticks that are 40,000 years old, that you can touch with your hand. There's grass that's still green, that's tens of thousands of years old because it got frozen, right away, and it's never lost the green color.
But as fascinating as it is to see these relics of an ancient era, or to see a tree split in half by thawing soil, or even to light a ball of methane on fire from under winter ice, at the end of the day, Peter and his colleagues want to know just how much organic matter is frozen in that permafrost, and how fast it might be released.
Currently, we think that there is something on the order of 2 to 3 times as much carbon locked up as frozen organic matter in permafrost as there is carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So releasing all of that organic carbon from permafrost into the atmosphere would be a real game changer. That would be a tremendous transformation of the planet's atmosphere. Now, the good news is that it would take a very, very long time for that to happen. However, we are warming the planet at a rate now that calls into question how quickly is that changing and what the consequences in the near future and in the far future are going to be.
You're in the middle of a field somewhere in California at 4 a.m. It's sort of surreal in a way because you've put so much time into it for so long, and actually seeing it over there is like, whoa, it's a big deal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, again, much different from yesterday. Still decreasing ice, though, notably east of Wrangel Island, kind of thinning out, and that edge over the Chukchi Sea there getting a little farther to the north. About the same elsewhere, though, and really not much of a big shift in the ice expected, and continued slow melting over the next 5 days. Coastal water forecast, south to southeast winds on the outer coastline of the Panhandle at 20 knots, 6-foot seas, and east-southeast 15 to 20 knots on the north coast with 5-foot seas. Central northern inside waters, south to southeast winds on the light side at 10 knots, seas slight south 15 for Clarence Strait with 3-foot seas. And for Wednesday, east-northeast winds at 20 knots, 6-foot seas for the south coast, east at 20 for the north coast, north 20 for Lynn Canal, and north 10 for Stevens Passage, northeast 10 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, southeast winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. And for the North Gulf Coast, east winds 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 3-foot seas, 15-knot easterly winds for the Barren Islands, seas only 2 feet there, and southeast 20 for Kamishak Bay, southwest 20 for southern Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, southwest 15. And on Wednesday, light south to southwest breeze 10 knots for Cook Inlet, southwest 10 knots also for Kamishak Bay, the Barren Island areas, and seas only 2 feet in those zones, and variable winds at 10 knots for the North Gulf Coast, seas around 3 feet. Prince William Sound, variable to east winds at 10 knots with slight seas. And for Bristol Bay tomorrow, Tuesday, southeast winds 20 knots, east winds 20 knots there on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. But for the area from Cape Sarachev to Castle Cape, east at 25 for small craft advisories, and then Castle Cape to Sitkinak, southeast 20, and east-southeast winds at 10 knots for Kodiak Island. And for Wednesday, call it variable 10 for Kodiak Island, and then northeast winds 10 to 15 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, seas 3 to 6 feet. Northwest 15 for Bristol Bay with 3-foot seas. For the Fox Islands, eastern Aleutians, west-southwest 10 to 15 knots for the day Tuesday, 3 to 7-foot seas. West 20, 4 to 8-foot seas for Adak and Atgam. Chitka Island northwest at 20, and Kiska to Shimia northwest 15. Southeast 15, Shimei-Kiska on Wednesday, and pretty light winds for Amchitka, northeast at 10. Same thing for Adak and Atka, really laying down wind-wise with that high pressure building in northeast at 10, 3 to 5 foot seas. And for the eastern Aleutians, northeast winds 10 to maybe 15 knots south of Unalaska Island, but pretty light, and seas running 3 to 6 feet. Southwest coast, Kuskokwim Delta coast, southeast 24 foot seas, Yukon Delta, east at 15, northeast 15 for St. Lawrence Island, northeast 20 St. Matthew Island, light southeast breeze at 10 for the Pribilofs. And for Wednesday, west at 10 for St. Lawrence Island, and the southwest coast, northerlies 10 to 15 knots, 3 foot seas, northern Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, St. Paul, St. George, north 10 knots, seas 4 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds tomorrow 20 knots with 4 foot seas, southeast 15 for the central coast, north 15 on the west side, and that extends all the way down to Wales. And then for Wednesday, from Wales, again up to about Point Lay, we'll call it north to northeast at 10 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas, central coast light northerly breeze at 10, and the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds will be from the east, 10 to 15 knots, seas running 3 to 4 feet. For tonight, again, light winds, or winds will be diminishing. The areas on the central coast there, the central Arctic coast, it was kind of breezy today. That'll be dropping off. Low clouds and fog will be on the increase there, right down through the Bering Strait, and low pressure keeps shower chances going over the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, with that washing out front and the Pribilofs. Otherwise, it'll be mostly clear, but increasing clouds and showers, southern Alaska, especially Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, and rain easing off for the eastern North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. And for tomorrow, kind of another wet, cloudy day for the Panhandle, but rainfall amounts will be on the lighter side. Isolated thunderstorms possible at Wrangell Mountains, western Alaska range, but cloudier, showery, and cooler for south central Alaska on up into the upper Tanana Valley to Eagle. And it stays unsettled eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, but that gets replaced by high pressure covering the Bering Sea on Wednesday. Cool and showery southern Alaska, some sunshine in the central interior, and then chance of rain for the north slope.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.